My next guest, James Superman Dixon, is a mentor, public speaker, fitness expert, and patient emissary. James, an RBK, has spent his lifetime as an amputee and proves that community and your faith can empower you to do anything. James can be seen all over the internet, providing content that all amputees can benefit from. It is my pleasure to introduce Mr. James Dixon. Hey, James, good to see you, my man. How's it going?
I'm excited to be here, brother. I'm doing well. How are you?
Well, the first thing I notice, and our viewers are going to notice, is that you're sitting in a car right now. Am I correct, or is this just a figment of my imagination?
This is figment of imagination. That doesn't happen. No, I just walked outside of a brand new amputee situation, and so I'm sitting in my car. I did not want to miss this opportunity with you. It's once in a lifetime, and I'm amped up to be here.
Well, I love the amped up phrase right at the end of that statement. I really appreciate that. You know, James, this is something that I will say I admire very much about you, and that given that we've scheduled an interview, given that you're getting your message out to as many people as possible, and still being able to, let's call it, prioritize a new amputee and somehow spin many plates, jump in your car, and have a conversation with me today. So my hat's very much off to you, sir. There is a reason they call you Superman, and we've just landed on one of those reasons. The first thing I want to ask you is, can you tell me what being an emissary is all about? Can you describe that for the audience?
Well, it's unique. When I looked at the idea of serving people, I wanted to look at not being a liaison, not an advocate, not just going in and encouraging people, but truly be an emissary, which means to be an ambassador for them, to bring encouragement, to bring hope, but to also fight for them, regardless of wherever they went for prosthetic care. I wanted to be that advocate, to step in whenever, wherever. No boss. It's kind of like the Jordan rule. No matter who I have a relationship with, the contract, remember, Michael Jordan was allowed to play basketball for the love of the game, anywhere, anytime. And for me, no matter who I work with, if it's an amputee, I have the right to help them stay wherever they want to go. I am an emissary that works anywhere, anytime. There are no rules, restrictions for me as far as relationships go. The amputee is what matters.
No, it's wonderful. And would you consider yourself to have been a spiritual person most of your life?
I would say I became a spiritual person because of my grandmother. So at age 11, when I had the amputation, her put in placing faith that I am more than my amputation. I am not limited. I'm not bound by it. I can be more than what the sum of my parts. So I would say, yes, I am most of my life, but beginning at age 11.
Yeah, I know that your relationship with your grandmother is quite special from what I've read and what I've listened to in some of your many interviews and video blogs. It would seem that she played a pretty critical role, not only in your development as a human being, but also in your journey as an amputee. When you were, a young man becoming an amputee at 11 years old, that to me is quite fascinating. And I do develop a healthy curiosity about people like yourself. Being an amputee for 6 years, my journey is relatively new, let's say. I'm really not a veteran of this space. Most of my lifetime I know as having all my limbs. So when I do meet someone like yourself, that has spent the better part of 4 decades. I don't want to reveal your age too much here. But you've spent most of your life on this very, very, let's call it precarious sort of situation that we all face in this amputee community. So when you became an amputee at such a young age, can you describe for the audience what some of that experience was like, given that you're in the midst of your childhood? Now, I know you had a number of surgeries, actually many, many, many surgeries leading up to your amputation due to some circulatory issues, but becoming officially an amputee at 11, what does that look like for you? And what can you remember about that time in your life?
Rick, I really appreciate you setting that up for me. I'll share it this way. I didn't know I was going to become an amputee. I had been grown accustomed to being using a walker and having restrictions, much like an above the knee would be. All my life, I had never taken a step without a walker. By the time I was 11, there was told to be that to my family that this was it for me. I would always be limited. Wheelchair would be the only other option outside of a walker. Then next door neighbor happened to be a Shriner, so sitting on the porch and asked my grandmother about the crippled boy. He said, "The crippled boy there, I'd like to help him," and told her about the Shriners. And the Shriners took me from Indiana to Chicago. I thought I was there for a visit. My mom and dad came together with me, and the first time they had been reunited. They gave me a tour and then said goodbye to me. I thought it was just another surgery. When I woke up, my leg was gone. I had no idea. And there was no family support around me. They were back in Indiana and on their way back, but I had woke up and my leg was just gone. Had I known it, and if I didn't want that to happen, I was just fearful. I had 2 kids on the side of me. Rick, one kid named Matt, the other named Gilbert. The kid named Matthew passed away my second day at the Shriners. Wow. The kid named Gilbert, his mother walked in. He was from Cabrini Green Apartments, the projects there in Chicago, and got paralyzed, neck down. She walked in and she said, "Gil, I can't do it anymore. It's too much for me." And she signed over her parental rights and abandoned it. Wow. So I thought that's what was happening with me. When my mom walked in, I had been freaking out because I thought I was gone. Either I was going to die or be abandoned. So my behavior wasn't probably the best at that moment. A nurse was trying to console me and saying, "James, you can be anything, do anything." My mother, though, was young and had never met an amputee in her life and really didn't know about limb differential. And my mom walks over and she just was like, she said, "Son, you're going to be a cripple all your life. Do you understand that?" And I was like, the nurse had told me I can do anything. And she said, "She's giving you false hope. Do you understand that you're a cripple?" And I was like, "But I don't want to be a cripple." So my mother slapped me and said, "Say that you're a cripple." And I hesitated. She slapped me again. She said, "I said, say you're a cripple." And I said it. And brother, those words, man, they were hard. They were rough on me. She thought she was giving me a dose of reality, but brother, that nearly broke me. And so everything that I strove to do after that moment was to prove that I was not that crippled kid.
That word, cripple.
Yeah.
I mean, that's heavy, man. That word for me, because I think you and myself were pretty close generationally. That word has such a massive negative connotation to it.
Yes, it does.
I believe the word cripple is essentially you're telling someone it's over, that there is really nothing redeeming about you. There is nothing redeeming about your life. And I think you have a very evolved perspective in that you see your mother as someone who's trying to help you understand the reality of what's going on. And probably back, I would assume, when you were 11 years old. Prosthetics, practitioners, the world of adaptive sports. These things were somewhat rare.
Yes.
They were not in the foreground as they have become now. Through the efforts of people like yourself, through the efforts of para-athletes, Paralympics, certain marketing campaigns, amputees have, let's say, have risen. They have risen like the phoenix. And
Sure.
so often, the thing I find very inspiring and that I find about your story in particular is have become very much a demonstration of strength, a demonstration of worth, a demonstration of, like your nurse indicated, anything is possible. You can do anything. And I think it's a very healthy sort of story in that you're thinking, this was a moment that was very life-changing for me. It was something that I understood the delivery system that my mother was employing, but it also, in some way, you have actually turned that into a positive in your life to recognize that maybe that moment was ground zero and
Yes.
now it was time to start rising. So the question I want to ask you just in relation to that particular moment is, what would be the advice that James Dixon would give to a very, very young, let's say 10, 11-year-old brand new amputee? What would be the wisdom that you would impart on that individual?
Well, this is something that happens quite often for me. And so what I've done is I begin with them this way. I first walk up and I demonstrate things that I do. Then I share with them, show them I'm an amputee. I'm able to walk, run, and move without any indication that I'm an amputee. I have learned to master my gait because I've worked so long at it. I've developed it. It was important for me to transition that. So when I come in, they don't know that I'm an amputee. And then if let's say a kid is lifted, sitting in a wheelchair, I'll come down to his level. I would show them my prosthetic. I'll show them, um, the residual limb, and I walk them through, and I tell them that nothing is impossible for them. And I share, because of the awe and seeing me do things, I tell them I'm just a preview. The full movie of life of something that's possible is you. You're the real hero. And I tell them that all I've done is work to make sure that I could introduce them to the world. And one day the world will know their name and they will encourage other kids. But I'm just a preview. They're the full movie.
Yeah, I think that's a great analogy. And wouldn't you say that one of the things that is so rewarding about becoming an amputee is the energy that you can share in this community and how we truly inspire each other.
That's right.
Very, very often I will meet amputees that are in a very difficult place. Maybe they're, just, brand new post-op, like the individual you're visiting today, or let's say they've just remained in a space where they're not progressing. Let's say
Right.
they're just sort of stuck. They'll say things like, I haven't walked in 10 years, things like that. And I always say that struggle is beautiful, that there's a beauty in that struggle. And this is not your final resting place.
That's right.
This is the beginning of something greater and something that you are going to look back on and say, look how far I've come. And I think people like yourself, people like your partner in crime, Cam Ayala,
Yeah.
are doing some fantastic things. I had the distinct pleasure of speaking with Cam. I want to say it was maybe a month ago, and
Right.
he's a remarkable individual. At the time was, just a brand new baby bird amputee, right out of surgery. And, I've seen some of what's going on with him recently, and it's phenomenal. It would seem to me that the two of you joining forces is just, it's like the classic, Batman and Robin. I mean, it's a perfect sort of combination. And how did you guys meet exactly? How did all of that come together? I'm interested in that.
Well, as you know, Cam is a horrible looking individual. So he needed
he needed some Hollywood looks next to him.
something to make him look better. No, so here's what happened. An upper arm rep for Ulster, Susie, had been watching my journey and connected with me. Had seen me. I've traveled the nation working with amputees. That's just what I do. I left full time. This is what I do. And she saw that she watches The Bachelorette and Bachelor Nation, if they call it.
Yeah.
And Cam was about to go into surgery. She wrote him and said, "I know someone you need to talk to." Cam had been, he's very, very astute. He does a lot of research, talking to above the knee amputees prior to a surgery. But there was a unique perspective that I could give and unique help that I could bring to the table. And so they connected us together, and I began to mentor him, preparing him for going through rehab and working with him about dealing with the phantom pains. I even had him go meet 5 above the knee amputees who wore different types of limbs. And so he got a chance to see what the real knee, the C leg, the power knee. He got to see all those things in place. Yep. And meet the people in person. And then walk him through the process of looking at a prosthetist. Didn't matter where he went. But I wanted him to go to someone that he could share his vision, and they could be with him long enough to walk him through years of his life, hand in hand. And so if a prosthetist says they're going to retire in a year or 2 years, it's not the one for you. You need someone who's going to be there beyond the first cycle. It's not about getting people paid. It's about making sure that they get you back to your life.
Yeah.
So I flew into Houston to meet Cam, took him to a CAF event where he could observe. Now, he was just 2 weeks after his amputation, and he's in a lot of pain.
Yeah.
But I wanted him to see what he could be, because if I gave him a preview, I know it would create a hunger in him. So I started working on some. I worked with a lot of celebrity people, and one of them was creating a new program that they had kind of mastered with Chris Hornsworth for, and I was like, man, I want something for adaptive people, and so we were working on that, and thought Cam would be a great person to help rebuild his physique and do it in a safe way that was designed for amputees. And so started working with him, took him to see that. And it was amazing to see Cam run for the first time in 7 years last weekend.
Yeah. I saw the video, by the way.
That was for him. This is 3 months after losing his leg.
It's incredible.
He should be using a cane by now.
Right.
But because of his determination and us carefully crafting the moments and how he was put together, programming the leg right there on the spot, having people in a safe environment work. And then as we shared our stories, him with lymphedema at age 11, me at the amputation at age 11, we're different generations, but above and below, and being able to speak with some commonalities of faith shared as well, we could touch and talk on a lot of different points, And it just really helps to touch lives,
And this endeavor above and below, which is really just getting started up here, and of course I'm checking out every episode, absorbing your your special brand of wisdom and also his sort of excitement and newness, about the amputee community. And I do believe that you guys are really onto something. What do you think the future holds in regards to that particular channel, and what are you looking to accomplish together?
Wow, this is going to be great. We have so many things that are coming. I have an expanding role that's going to take place throughout um, America in 2023. So there's going to be a big push, and for many people, look like, hey, look who just got discovered, if you will.
Yeah.
But there are things that, nothing happens overnight. You work for many nights, and then it. But I'm going to use some of the new platforms that are availing to me to bring even more people to that platform. I want to use it as a conduit. Doesn't matter where you go. That's why we don't push any particular products or services or company or manufacturers. This is really about amputees. The above and below will kind of be a conduit to just give information and encouragement. But we do see it. There will be Roku, and there will be shows. There'll be documentary. There's a lot of things that we're working on because there's one documentary being done on Cam, and there's one being done on me. And so we're going to do some things blended together. Really try to use it. Neither one of us care about fame or acceptance. This is about sharing something. Rick, and you can understand this. This is my legacy. 4 years ago, I wasn't even vocal about being an amputee. I hid it until
I know that.
I was the first time I even admitted that I was an amputee. I wore shorts for the first time at 44. By the time I was 45, I was traveling the nation speaking. Now it's only been bigger and more. I have 1.4 million that followed my YouTube channel. And this is about impacting lives. That's all I care about.
And what do you think? Because that was certainly on the list of questions and curiosities that I have about you. When you say, I hid away my amputation, I spent the majority of my adult life working in various industries, and you were still a high functioning person. I mean, you weren't necessarily struggling in terms of your ability to be productive, but showing that you were an amputee. What was the turning point? What was the moment where you said, you know what? The world needs to know who I am. The world needs to know the real me.
The turning point for me was the insurance took care of existing amputees. Like when I first hired in General Motors, I could not get a prosthetic through the insurance. Took almost 11 years. But the rules changed. They got a new contract that would allow me to. And when I got the new prosthetic, it was the first time that I had an upgraded leg. My process is, I didn't know I didn't have a good one. He gave me a satch foot. And if those who don't know what that is, it's basically a mannequin leg. So it's more for aesthetics, just to have one.
Right.
I played college basketball in that leg. I was so limited with what the leg could do. I just thought being an amputee was just hard. You just had to overcome it. And so to get a responsive leg that could give energy back, and 2 days after I got the leg, I was like, I want to try some things that I never tried before, because this is the technology. It finally caught up with my abilities, I felt.
Yep.
So I decided at work, I'm going to wear shorts for the first time in my life. And I also, had to evict the voice of my father telling me to cover that up. Nobody wants to see that. I had to evict all the rejection, being in the inner city where kids fault me about being an amputee rather than give you acceptance or love, mocked you. And so all of these shaming moments, bullying moments I experienced caused me to become more reclusive about it. My aha moment was I decided I'm no longer hiding. And if anyone mocks me now, I was like, I'm going to respond in a negative way. I was, being 6'4", 270, my mindset was going to go, I wasn't going to put up with any more bullying. But to my surprise, the people I work with all wore shorts with me, and it meant a lot to me. And when they did that to me, for me, it opened me up. I was crying at work, and not much moves me other than a human story of overcoming. But
Absolutely. No, absolutely. And the technology piece that you're speaking of, how, what you said is so powerful about the technology had finally caught up to my abilities. And I've spoken to what I refer to as lifers like yourself that will speak of the satch foot and some of the primitive, archaic. I've spoken to amputees that said they had to duct tape their prosthesis together because, they're literally cobbling together their prosthesis because they either don't have the money to get it tweaked or adjusted, or it's just out of necessity. I have to go to work today and I don't have time to go to the clinic. I have to get through the day somehow. And it's really remarkable to me that we've sort of taken this huge leap forward. And I consider myself very, very lucky. I just recently went to a prosthesis, I want to say somewhat similar to yours, a single strut design. And I can tell you it's really been a game changer for me in terms of mobility. And you're right, because once you get into a prosthesis that feels right and gives you that confidence, you start looking around going, what can I do next? What else can I do? Maybe I can go on a 5-hour hike today. Maybe there's something that I've been holding back from because I was lacking the confidence and the comfort that required me to do it. And all of those technologies are so critical. And I'm hoping that as we move forward in this as a community, that we will be able to make these things more available and more accessible for some of us who don't have the resources or the connections or the right insurance or the right practitioners in place, because there really is some struggle there for a lot of folks. And I know there's this tendency to sort of give up, and we have to encourage those people and hope that we can point them in the right direction, because there are resources out there. There are people that care, and hopefully we can get everyone up on their feet and doing the things that they love on a daily basis. I really appreciate so much of what you've had to say, James, and I think it's really important for our audience to see firsthand what it is you're doing out in the amputee community. We're going to present some of the video and some of the images that will probably inspire you with what James Dixon is doing out in the amputee community. So let it roll.
When it comes to losing a limb, and there's nothing that can quite connect you to that level of loss, because this can be a loss of yourself. People can reject you. You have these fears. Will I ever be loved? Will anybody accept me? Will I feel all right in front of the one I love naked? All of those things creep into your mind, but what you do end up bringing is realizing that not only am I unique now, but now I have a testimony, and now I have a story. Now I've got proof that I've overcome something. And when you overcome something, you become something. Oftentimes people will ask, how is it that I'm able to drive? Well, I've gotten accustomed to, because of the improvement of the prosthetics, being able to feel no hand controls needed. I'm able to feel the pressure that I'm applying to the pedal. For me, I get to thinking about the idea of taking amputees that have never walked or fearful about taking that first step and seeing them stand up There is just something very powerful about that first step. I realized that all my steps were ordered, that this was a gift to me and not a curse, because it had allowed me in all my years to go through so many transitions and overcome so many adversities that I'm able to pour all of that passion. I can identify with anyone's pain. This is absolutely what I was born for. My calling was to build people. Got it? Most legs are made, 325 is the maximum. But because of SRT and with ulcer technology, I'm able to go well beyond that. The reason why I work out and the reason why I encourage every person that suffers limb loss to is because atrophy will kick into our bodies. And I never want us to return back to the wheelchair. And so working out is so that we're stronger, not for today, but for the days when weakness tries to creep into our bodies. If we outwork ourselves today, we'll have strength for tomorrow and for the future and set an example for others. You don't have to go back to that wheelchair. You can keep living life without limitations. When you look in the mirror, what do you see? I spent 11 years building trucks in the automotive industry. And although I took pride in working with my brothers and sisters in the union and building them, I knew that there was something missing, because in my life, my purpose was about building people. Building people meant getting them back to the lives they were meant to be. Losing a limb is traumatic, but nothing is greater than finding out that you have no limitations. I had my first surgery, I was 3 months of age. And then I had surgery every 6 months until I was 11, and so much scar tissue was there. The foot was right here. This is actually my ankle. My foot was there, and it was about that long from the lack of blood flow. It was dying. And so they amputated.
All right, James, so today what we're gonna do is we're gonna take some measurements of your limb, then we're gonna cast your limb with plaster of Paris. After we cast your limb with plaster, we're gonna then transfer your limb into the tank.
Okay.
We're gonna fill that tank up with water, and the benefit of that is that you're gonna be weight bearing as this cast sets off. And the point is that you have different tissue types that compress differently, and this tank is gonna give you that shape under weight bearing scenarios so that you know that your socket is custom molded to you when you're standing on it. Once that cast sets off, we're gonna take your limb out of the tank. We're gonna take the cast off your limb. I'm gonna fill it up with plaster. I'm gonna do some slight modifications to it just so that we know that the fit's good. And then we're gonna make a test socket.
Perfect.
This is called a test socket or check socket.
This is what that created.
There we
Perfect. Oh, great fit.
go. It's a good start.
That was easy. The most important thing to me is seeing that everyone gets to live their life without limitations. To have the opportunity to go after your dreams, your goals, and not be stopped because of your limb loss. I mean, this is what gets me up. This is what makes me go after everything that I do now. I don't want record books. I want to change lives. I want someone else to have what I didn't have. At the time of my amputation, there was no one there. There was no mentors. There was no one that motivated me. I had no one to turn to ask questions. But at SRT, they've enabled me to be a part of a team that's got practitioners, that has rehab therapists, outpatient people, a full team that can take care of a full person's life. Because you got to get back to life. You got to get back to living. During the first 2 years after an amputation is the most depressing. But that is why you need a mentor. And I'm so excited to be a part of lives, to see them overcome. You matter. Thank you for choosing SRT. People ask me about my story, about how I lost my leg. Well, losing a leg wasn't a choice of mine, it was from birth. When I was 3 months of age, I began having a series of surgeries that culminated at the age 11. I was in Shriners, Chicago's hospital for children, and that's when they amputated. The loss of my leg felt like a loss of myself. I can remember they were asking me, what will I become? What would you like to be when you're older? And everything that I said I wanted to be, I had people who tell me, you'll never be that. I've had a lot to try to overcome. Mostly, it was head trash, stuff that people told me about myself. And so I decided I would prove everyone wrong and decided to go out for every sport. The first sport I went after was basketball because I thought if I could just prove myself against those able-bodied kids, if I could prove myself against those that they thought were great, if I could somehow dominate those guys, if I could turn my passion and everything I wanted to be and show that I was equal to them, I would find validation, I would find acceptance. I would try it out for the team and I was cut. Not because I couldn't play basketball, but because they did drills that went lateral, and that's where my movement was weak. The coach then had us do a mile and gave us a time in order to beat that. I wasn't prepared for it, and so I failed. The way I was set up and the way I'm lined up, the way I live, I decided that every morning I would get up and I'd run a mile. Every morning I'd try to make that team. So the year comes around, the next year for me to try to make that team. And everything that he had used to cut me, everything that showed my shortcomings, everything that showed that I wasn't enough, that's what I perfected. And then finally, when it came time for them to make the team, the last day we're doing these drills, running back and forth, and man, I'm defiant. I will not bend over. I'm not going to throw up. I'm not going to quit. Every time he'd say, here's another time to run, he'd blow his whistle. I stood up and I put my hands on my hips in defiance. And at that very moment, though, when I was running one last lap, I dislocated my kneecap. It was like every dream I ever had got taken away from me. It was ripped out of my hands, ripped out of my heart. That disappointment then, I thought was going to be the end of me, but there was always somebody telling me I could be more and do more. And I'm thankful for those family members that were there for me. I buried all those dreams that night, that day. And then at 45, I decided I was going to wear shorts for the first time in my life, unapologetically. I wanted them to see that I'd finally overcome all that head trash or what they said I couldn't be. So I began to lift. I began to run. I got in my first marathon. I've done all these things because I'm no longer bound by the disability of what they said about me. I am an amputee. I am an athlete. I believe in everything that they've said about me. They said I couldn't be, and I decided I would be. There's more to you. This is how you build your house. This is how you overcome. You bottle up everything they say about you, and you pour open that can of prove them wrong on everything you do.
This episode wouldn't be complete if I weren't somewhere serving, being in the hospital. I wanted to say thank you, my friend, for a wonderful episode. I'm amped up for life. Appreciate all you're doing for all of us. Thanks for having me on.
I want to thank James Superman Dixon for being with me today. Fantastic episode. My name is Rick Bontkowski. This is the AMP'D UP211 podcast, and I want to wish everyone health and happiness, and we will see you next time.